few minutes, we're going to worship. You may have noticed if you're new here that we do things like totally different, totally backwards from most typical church services. And that's because years ago when I was talking to God about this thing that we do here called Heaven's Invasion, before it really was actually launched, I'm like, well, Lord, I'd like to know what your opinion is. What do you want? How do you want to run things? What do you want to do? And you know what he told me? He asked me a question, because when God asks you questions, you got to pay attention. Because it's not like he needs to know the answers, because he wants you to know the answer, right? So he asked me the question, he said, well, when you go to a typical church service, what's kind of like the main event in a typical church service? I go, well, that's easy. It's the sermon, right? Everything in the service builds toward the sermon, and that's the focal point, and things happen, there, and after the sermon is the altar call and all that kind of stuff. So, I'm saying that, talking to the Lord about that. Then he hits me with his second question. What if I want to be the main event? Yeah. So I'm like, oh, yes, please. So, immediately it was clear to me that what he wanted for us was to kind of do our horizontal stuff, where we share and minister to one another. And then when we kind of go vertical, we can stay there. I don't know about you, but I have been in so many services where I got spiritual whiplash. Because I'm in the glory, and then all of a sudden somebody wants to take the offering. It's like, oh, what? How could you do that? I was there. So we don't even receive an offering in this place. We put a couple of treasure chests up there, and people, if you feel led to give and worship God that way, you can do that, right? So I'm just sharing this for some of you guys that are new, so that you kind of wonder, oh, why is this so weird? Well, because we are. It's just the way it goes. So, unique. Thank you for being so diplomatic. Anyway, we've been on this journey for the past number of weeks this year, where the Lord's had us focused on spiritual warfare, which, is a topic that can go wrong really quick. Because I came up in a generation where spiritual warfare meant that you marched around the church and yelled at the devil, and then went home, thought you did something, thought you thought you actually accomplished something. And God's been really teaching us that warfare has everything to do with us agreeing with Him and declaring that verbally, so that whatever it is that He wants gets established in the earth. So we're learning some things about that, and so I started sharing some things about the armor of God and all that thing in Ephesians 6. And then the Lord reminded me of some research I had done like 25 years ago, where I just did a deep dive into the topic of strongholds, the strongholds of the enemy, right? And the Lord, showed me that there were 6 major areas of strongholds. Now, strongholds are beliefs and ideas that we have in our mind that we think are okay, but they're really not. They're actually lies that we're believing. And because they're lies, the devil agrees with them, and it gives him permission to actually influence us in some very serious ways. So we've been looking at these strongholds. We've already covered the stronghold of pride. Last week we looked at unbelief. And tonight I have the pleasure of speaking to you about the happy subject of failure. Right. The stronghold of failure. Yeah, believe me, none of these are enjoyable to talk about, but if we're going to understand where we're compromised, because that's the issue, where I've got ideas and beliefs in my mind that the enemy can agree with, I'm compromised. And my authority is compromised. It's like if I try to take authority over the devil in somebody, somebody I'm trying to help somebody and they're dealing with failure and I'm dealing with failure, I have no authority to help them because I haven't gotten free of it myself. So the Lord's really wanting us to, kind of come to grips with these things so that we can get free and that we can actually have a greater level of authority and impact. Does that sound good? I think it's a pretty good idea. So this idea of failure, believe it or not, it's kind of rooted in a similar idea as the stronghold of pride. Because when we talked about pride, the idea, the root lie of pride is my opinion of myself. Okay? And in failure, it's a similar thing, only it's my negative opinion of myself. Okay? So when what I like to do is put this in the form of a sentence or a declaration that we make. And so here's what I wrote: that I believe that my negative opinion of myself is the truth, not what God says about me. That's the essence of the stronghold of failure. That I hold an opinion of myself that's negative, and I believe that with all my heart. Yeah, I'm no good, I can't do this, I always fail, I'm a jerk, whatever it is. I believe that that's true about me, no matter what God says. See? And so when I have that, it's like the enemy gets access into my life, and you know what he does? He makes those words come true. You actually become a failure in some ways because you believe you are. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, basically, because I'm believing this lie. So, when I was originally studying this so many years ago, I was coming up with all this big list of, characteristics and examples of what the failure stronghold looks like. And for some of us, it's like, you feel like you're never going to change. I'm never going to get any better. I can't seem to, make any real change in my life. Every time I do, I fail, I fall back. I take one step forward, 2 steps back. You ever say that? Like, I take one step forward and I'm, knocked back 2. Yeah, it's like you have that sense that you're never going to get any better. Or how about this one? I'm only human. Or, I'm a sinner saved by grace. Okay? These are ideas that come out of a stronghold of failure, right? Because if I limit myself to who I am as a human, or what I was as a sinner and not as a saint, right? I give the enemy that access to basically say, yeah, you're not going any further than what you believe, right? Then you've got areas like discouragement, where you lose any sense of hope over moving forward in your life. It's like, oh, I can't believe this failed again. I can't believe I failed again. We try, right? We try to be righteous and holy, and we screw up. But when you're under the influence of the stronghold failure, it's not that you screwed up, it's that you have disqualified yourself. You are no longer able to really function as a good Christian because you messed up. That failure becomes your identity. It's like, I can't overcome this. I always fail. Right? Then you've got inferiority complex, passivity, where you just say, you know what, I give up, I'm not going to do anything because I always fail. You know what else is a manifestation of the failure stronghold? Poverty. What I was just talking about tonight, the poverty spirit. I'll never be successful in life. God, I just can't seem to, make money or do well, financially. Poverty spirit. Laziness is part of that as well. Loneliness is a manifestation of the failure stronghold. Why? Why would loneliness be that? Because you don't feel like you're somebody that others want to know, that others want to be friends with. So you carry within yourself an image of yourself that people just don't like you, they don't want you, And so you know what happens then is that you don't give people a chance to get close. Before they can, you push them away. It says, don't you dare try to get close to me because I know you're just going to reject me. Because I'm no good. Failure syndrome. The last one is really tough. It's when you have been so influenced, and this is where the enemy, believe it or not, this is where the enemy wants to take you. He wants to bring you to a place of failure where you hate yourself and you're willing to end your life. Okay? Suicide is the ultimate manifestation of the stronghold of failure. All right? So, you know, I'm thinking about this today. I'm saying, Lord, I just hate the fact that I have to talk about all these negative things. But we have to expose. You got to bring stuff to the light, right? You got to bring it to the light so that you can deal with it. And any of these things that you're struggling with, you just need to know that every single one of those negatives, when you bring it into the light, the Lord says, I'm going to take that and reverse it. Because that's what He says. Okay? Now, this paper that I'm holding, I've got a bunch of copies of this in the back, and there's scripture references that I've listed for every single one of these characteristics. So you can go ahead and take that on your way out tonight and actually study this on your own and allow Holy Spirit to help you get free from any aspects of failure in your life. But you know what? One of the greatest examples of the Father's heart toward failure that I know and that has ministered to me so deeply in my life, the greatest example for me is the story of the prodigal son. That story has been so transformative in my life. Because when you understand, and many of you heard me teach on this in the past, so forgive me for repeating it, but repetition sometimes is helpful. You know, that young man, when he went to his dad and said, I want my share of the inheritance now. You know, we read that and go, wow, man, he's got some cheek, he's got some nerve, you know. But you know what he was really saying? In that culture, at that time, he was actually telling his dad, you're of no use to me, I wish you were dead. You're better off to me dead. Because if you were, I'd have your money. Can you imagine? Can you imagine saying that to a father, to your father? I mean, some of you may have not had a good relationship with your dad, and you probably could say that you're better off to be dead. Let's be honest, right? But for the most part, that's such a shocking statement to make. And Jesus knew full well when he was telling the story that his audience would recognize just how heinous that would be for a son to come to his dad and say, I want my share now. You're better off to be dead. That's crazy. So we know the story. Father graciously gives the son his share, takes all that stuff, goes off, and basically just goes wild. Just goes crazy. Right? Spends it all on parties, on you know, getting high, getting drunk, whatever. Women, the whole nine. And we know the story. Burns through all of that money and ends up in a place where nobody knows him, nobody cares about him. He's reduced to feeding pigs. In Jewish culture, pigs are pretty low on the scale, okay? They ain't kosher. So he's there feeding pigs, and he becomes so hungry, he looks at the pig food, which, by the way, you know what the pigs were being fed? They were being fed these husks, carob husks, which are just fibrous things that have no taste to them. You can hardly bite and chew into them. Pigs can do it because they've got the constitution for it, but as human food, it would be like eating a cardboard box. There's some ketchup on my cardboard. No, it's bad. It was horrible. And it was at that point he comes to his senses finally and says, what? Even the servants in my father's house live better than this. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back home and I'm going to say to my dad, I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Just please make me, I beg you, make me as one of your hired men, and I will serve you as a servant for the rest of my life. What is he saying? I recognize that I have failed to such a degree that I no longer deserve anything except the most bare necessities of life. Have you ever felt that way? Have you ever been in a place where you failed to such an extent that you know, it's almost like, God, I don't deserve anything from you, but if you could just love me enough that you would still let me come to heaven, or something like that. You know, however you might have phrased it. A lot of times we'll try to make a deal with God. Lord, if you'll just get me through this, I promise you I'll do X, Y, and Z, right? We like to make those kind of bargains with God. But we come with such a sense of failure in our life that we really don't expect God to receive us and to treat us the way He did before we failed, right? We have a hard time imagining that He could ever do that. Why? Because the people that we know in our life, when you fail, you know, and hurt somebody or disappoint them or make them angry, they don't usually treat you the same way as before you messed up, right? So we have all that history of being treated in a different way when we have failed and tried to make things right. So we just automatically think that that's how He is. But in the story, right, we know the story, so we know the end of the story. What happens? The young man, while he is still way off in the distance, right? It says that the father started running toward him. I want you to see something here. The fact that the father saw the son while he was still a long ways off, do you know what that means? That means that every day he was looking, watching, and waiting for that son to turn his heart and come back home. And so when he saw that young man on the horizon moving toward him, he said, I can't wait. I can't wait. That's my boy. That's my kid. He was lost. I'm not waiting. And the father ran. The father ran to that guy. And the son, of course, tries to go, you know, into his rehearsed speech. Father, I'm not worthy to be called your son. Make me as one of your... And before he even gets it out, the father is smothering him with hugs and kisses and saying to the servants, go, get the robe, get the ring, get the sandals. My son is returned. Do you realize that the father never, ever addressed anything of the failure of that child? It was not even brought up. Instead, what happened? What happened? The kid got a brand new robe, he got a ring, he got sandals. Do you know what that represents? The robe represents the identity that was always his. Because you see, that young man never stopped being the son of his father. He was never disowned. He was never cut off. He remained that father's son throughout that entire time. Throughout all the failure that young man experienced, he was still the son of his father. So he got the robe, and the robe signified, yes, you are my son. You are part of this family. He got the ring. Do you know what the ring represents? It represents the full authority of a son. We're talking Oriental culture here. We're talking how they established an entire empire of their land and everything that they did. And the ring was used, it was a signet ring that had a design that was unique to the family, so that when business was done, they would use the wax to seal the scroll, and the ring would be impressed in the wax to show, yes, this came from that family. And it had the force of law. So this young man was immediately placed back in a place of authority. You know, he was also given sandals. You know why? Because the sandals represent his destiny. His walking forward into the purpose and the destiny of his life. And despite his wasting resources that who knows what the value was, the father was saying, it has not disqualified you from what I created you for. There is not a single failure that will ever disqualify you from fulfilling what Papa created you to be and to do. And I don't know about you, but every time I really begin to focus on that and focus on the way Jesus described the Father. See, that Father is our Heavenly Father, right? That He was wanting us to know what kind of Papa we really have. And every time I really begin to get deep into that and meditate on it and process it, it just, oh, my heart is just touched again with the depth of His love and His grace for every single one of us. And so I want to encourage you tonight that if you struggle in anywhere, any areas of your life with this failure thing where you feel like you failed to the extent that you can't get past it or that you'll never amount to anything, just know that freedom is right there in front of you. Because your Father, if you'll allow Him to, even tonight, right, Alex? Even tonight, Papa will wrap His arms around you as we worship. And He'll smother you with His kisses. And He'll tell you, I've been waiting for this. Because see, when we're feeling that way, right, it's like we don't want to come too close because we're afraid of what He's going to say. Look at what happened in that story and you'll know what Father God wants to say to you. You are my beloved child. It was like you were dead because you were hiding yourself from me. You were separating yourself from me, but you know what? You were never lost to me. And He'll wrap His arms around you, whisper sweet nothings in your ear. Actually, they're not sweet nothings. They're sweet somethings. Because whatever He wants to say is going to be something, and it's going to be good.